Hey guys, my name's Sam. Welcome to PrepMedic. Today we're going to do some Q&A. So it's been a while since I've done a Q&A video. I posted up on my Instagram right here, which if you're not following me, go ahead and do that. Or don't, no skin off my back, either way. But I posted the question of, hey, what do you want to know about? And predominantly, the questions that came in were career-based for me. There's a couple other ones that we'll hit, but if you're not into public safety EMS and you're just not curious about that kind of thing, this probably isn't the video for you. I'll see you on the next one. I've got all sorts of great stuff down below. But that being said, let's get into it. I've kind of condensed them down, so I'm not going to answer everything, but you get the gist. So the first question I got, and that's been kind of asked over and over and over again was, is it better to work as an EMT for a couple of years or get paramedic certified as soon as possible? So I've got a different opinion on this than a lot of paramedics in EMS. And, you know, some people agree with me, some people don't, and that's totally fine. I think if you want to do EMS as a career, you should not waste your time trying to work as an EMT for a year, 2 years, 3 years before you get your paramedic. And I've got a couple different reasons for that. Number one is if you're doing this as a career, you're at least supporting yourself. You might be trying to support a family. And if you just go with your EMT, it's going to be a lower pay scale. You're going to burn yourself out doing dialysis transfers, working on some, crappy private service that treats you poorly. And you're going to hate EMS by the time you become a paramedic and start working in a 911 system. That's not true everywhere. You can definitely work in a 911 system as an EMT, but in general, if you want to do this for a living, just go to paramedic school. Right out of paramedic school, the paramedic that was an EMT for 5 years beforehand is going to have an advantage. But if you look at them, 5 years down the road, the zero to hero, the EMT straight to paramedic, and the EMT that worked for a while as an EMT, if you look at them 5 years down the road after they got their paramedic, they're going to be comparable providers. So don't burn yourself out. Just go to school, get your paramedic degree or whatever you're getting, and start working. I think that's really the play there. So the second question I got was, what can EMTs do to study or prepare before going to paramedic school? My answer here is, again, not shared by everybody. I think the biggest thing you can do is just go to paramedic school and be prepared to study your ass off and do good work in the class. I don't think there's a magic bullet. I don't think there's this study guide that you need to get beforehand. I don't think you have to read the textbook before you go to school. I think what you need to do is you need to go to class ready to learn, read your textbooks before your lectures, and just make sure you're keeping up with things. To be totally honest with you, paramedic school is not some unachievably hard schooling or anything like that. It is time consuming. It is difficult in terms of time management, I would say, but there's no individual concept in paramedic school that should leave you scratching your head going, oh my God, this is so hard. It is not organic chemistry. So, go into it and just do a good job in the class, but I don't think you need to kill yourself before you get into paramedic school. I don't think there's any, like I said, I don't think there's any magic bullet. The next question breaks us out of the EMS stuff for the people that are here for more preparedness stuff. Somebody said, are you using a get-home bag? And the answer is kind of. I have all of my SWAT stuff in my car. I've got my SWAT medical pack, I've got my sustainment bag for search and rescue, and I've got my armor, and I do concealed carry. So with all of that stuff, no, I don't have a dedicated get-home bag, but I do have the supplies that are going to help me if something were to happen while I was on the road that can get me home. So is it as good as a specialized bag? No. Is it going to work for me? Yes. And I'll be honest, my life gets unorganized so freaking quickly that there are times where I don't have the appropriate stuff in my car if I took it out to clean or I went on a call out and I'm putting it all back together. So yes and no. Next up, if you could give yourself one piece of advice at the beginning of your career, what would it be? So for me, I think I would tell my younger self that you don't know what you don't know. I still have an ego. I'll freely admit to that. I still get overconfident in things sometimes. But when I was early on in my career, I kind of sneered at the older guys in my department, people that might not have had the technical knowledge that I had at that time, but they had a lot of real world experience. And I don't think it's as dramatic as people lead you to believe that, by how the book says to do things is completely different than the real world. I don't think they're that different. I think we should be doing things by the book in the real world most of the time. But what changes is how the book is implemented in the real world. And, I just wish I could have told myself to take a deep breath, settle back, and actually watch some of the older guys in the department because they were very knowledgeable. But I didn't always see that. So, we all have an ego, especially if you get to a certain level in, any realm of public safety. Everybody's going to have an ego, but being able to kind of weaponize that ego for your advancement and not have it, close you off to new possibilities and learning from other people. I think that is huge. And, there are days where I still need to take that advice, almost 15 years into my career. So that's what I'd say there. So T-Live's Life asks, how many years were you in EMS as a medic before going to flight? I was in EMS as a paramedic for a little under 10 years before I made it to flight. I applied a couple years prior and didn't get in. I think 10 years is a pretty typical number for most high-performing flight teams. You can definitely get in before that point, especially if you got some connections, but it's not something that's going to happen really fast for you. A couple other questions I got in here was the jump from ground to flight. I think I'm going to make that into a future video, but I cannot emphasize enough how different the flight environment is from the ground environment and how much of a learning curve there was when I first, came into it. I thought I was up on my game as a ground medic, and then going through orientation, I realized that I was full of crap. So, I think there's a lot to learn, and, I think that's a whole nother topic that we'll, address on another day. Moving on, I do a lot of gear videos on this site, obviously. So one of the questions I get kind of repeatedly is, do they reimburse you or provide gear when stocking your bags for TAC, Med, SAR, etc., or is it self-funded? And the answer is yes, they pay for all the basic supplies that we need to perform. They pay for packs, they pay for armor, pouches, helmets, comms. All of that is covered, and all our medical supplies are covered. When you first get your SWAT medic bag, you get that and you go into the supply cage and you basically just start taking the stuff off the shelves of what you need, throwing it in that kit and designing it however you want to. We kind of have this minimum par, but really how you want to stock it is up to you. Now, beyond that though, a lot of us have modified with our own gear. Technically, we're supposed to use the medical gear that's provided to us because those are the approved pieces of equipment. But when it comes to, armor, helmet, some pieces of comms, a knife or gloves or a hat, outerwear, underwear, that kind of thing, we're all kind of mixing and matching. So if we want something beyond the basic stuff that they supply for us, we have to buy it. Now, I am insanely lucky to have this channel because I get a lot of stuff sent to me, so I can usually stock out of kind of my surplus review material, if you will. You can see all the medical packs I have behind me. And then, I will give out some things to teammates if they need something. I'll throw them a bag or, a piece of kit. So, it's a little bit of both, but everything we need to do the job is supplied to us. It's just not always top of the line equipment. Oh, I like this one. So, Casson Lemon, I'm going to say these names wrong, asks, have you ever considered going to PA school? Yes and no. Yes, I've considered it. I have decided that that is not in the foreseeable future. Simply because as a flight paramedic, I have more autonomy and do more skills than most PAs out there. And that's not disparaging what PAs do. They're making a lot of decisions at a higher level. They're looking at a lot more things. But as a flight medic, we're on our own. We're doing things with our nurse partner. We're RSIing, criking, finger Thors, giving a bunch of meds, making field decisions. And I really, really like that environment. There are certainly places where you can fly as a PA and you've got a much increased scope of practice, and that's all great. They're pretty few and far between. I don't really want to move. And I really don't have any interest in being, a family practice PA or, prepping people for surgery. That's just not my jam. And when you get to like the ER and stuff, and again, there are exceptions. If you want to go rural medicine, those PAs and NPs are making a lot of autonomous decisions in those ERs, but I don't have a desire to go hyper rural. So if you're in like a university ER, a busy ER, generally speaking, the mid-level provider is going to be relegated to like a fast track and urgent care and take the less urgent cases. And I just don't have a desire to do it. More power to you if you do. You definitely learn a lot through that schooling, but I don't think it's for me, to tell you the truth. Okay, so this one is going on to medical care, and I like this one a lot. Talk about spinal movement restrictions and C-collars. Okay, so when I started in ski patrol when I was, I don't know, 17, 18, a while ago, I'm 33 now, we had, in our final exam, we had to backboard somebody, and we had to use webbing. So we'd take the webbing, you know, under their arms, up over their shoulders, tighten it down their bodies in X's, and then we'd tape the living crap out of their heads. And one of the pass-fail things they did is they'd take the patient up, they'd pick them up sideways, and if they moved more than like an inch or 2 inches, we'd fail that station. And man, they were just cinched to that board. And we really thought we were saving lives. We really thought we were, you know, doing the Lord's work and really, you know, making a difference on that ski hill. And really what we know now is that these really tight immobilizations on rigid backboards are actually harming patients. And it's not that surprising, right? Like, we're causing pressure ulcers, we're restricting their ability to breathe well. You know, a flat board is not the anatomic position. You know, our spines kind of like do this kind of thing, and a board is totally flat. So like, mush those things together, we're probably not, you know, keeping that spine in a neutral inline position. I don't think I've used a backboard in almost 10 years. If we have to put somebody on some kind of rigid immobilization to like move them or something, we'll put them on a scoop, we throw them on the cot, and we take the scoop away. The only time the scoop stretcher is going to stay under them is if I'm using it for like global immobilization. If we've got like jelly limbs and spinal injuries and a jelly chest and we've got all of these leg injuries, yeah, I'm just gonna tape them down to that board because it's the only thing that I can do to keep them from moving. It's gonna limit movement when we're going over to the physician's table. So we still throw C-collars on. There's some conflicting data about that as well, but what we think we know at this point is that the best thing you can do to patients is ask them not to move their heads very much, and then just try to limit movement throughout care. We immobilize most people on a soft stretcher and just ask them not to move. We might throw a little bit of tape on their forehead just to remind them not to be moving their neck around. But the vast majority of these patients, they don't need immobilization, and immobilization is doing more harm than good. I actually remember, and going back to that ego question, I remember an early call I had, whereas, you know, we used to do standing takedowns on backboards, you know, all of that stuff, and then, you know, somebody was out walking around and we'd force them down on a board. But we'd also do like KED extrications from a car, and I thought, you know, the KED was a great device, which it's a green thing that sits behind you, immobilizes your head. Totally useless now. But we had this patient sitting in the car complaining of some neck pain, and like this senior firefighter, AMT actually, at the time was like, okay, like, here, stand up, sit down on this cot, and I'll lay back, I'm gonna hold your head. And I was so concerned. I was like, holy crap, this dude's gonna kill somebody. He's so negligent. Like, this was horrible care. And I talked to him about it, and he was like, what are you talking about? Well, you know, 10 years later, like, yeah, he was absolutely right, because that's what we do with most of our patients. You just ask them, hey, don't move. Let's stand up really slowly. All right, turn with me, sit on the cot, and we're good to go for most patients. Now, obviously, always follow your local policies and procedures and all of that. It's a little bit more complicated than I'm making it here. All right, so back on kind of the, you know, professional career stuff. Somebody asked, do you see your program include specialty flights, ECMO, Impella, balloon pumps? And if so, do you take perfusion with you? So we can't fly ECMO in an A-Star. It's too big. We do take ECMO on ground, and for our ECMO transfers, we do take a perfusionist with us to help manage that. We manage like the vent and some of the other things, but that perfusionist manages the ECMO machine itself. Impellas, balloon pumps, high rob patients, swans, EVDs, all of those kind of advanced things we take ourselves. We don't take any other specialty providers. We don't have any specialty teams within our program. We're all trained to take those things. So we take those things pretty regularly, and we'll take those both on ground and we will fly with them. So that is something we'll do relatively commonly. So Stana Henke asked, chest seals for civilians in your EDC, good or bull with some knowledge? So I need to do more reading on this. If you go and ask Dr. Fisher right now, who does a lot of research in this realm, does a lot of stuff for the Committee for Tactical Combat Casualty Care, really knows his shit and is way better trained than I am in a lot of things. He will tell you chest seals are bull for civilians and that you should stop using them, or at least that's what I believe he'd say. We've had a couple discussions about it. I have not read the literature that has led to that opinion. It is still standard of care for us to do, both in my 911 role and then our flight role. So what I will say is that if you put a chest seal on somebody, you are increasing the chance of a tension pneumothorax, which is a life-threatening issue. Whereas a sucking chest wound in and of itself is not necessarily going to kill you. So the thought process here is that if I cover it up, I can create a life-threatening issue that can be hard to identify, and it might cause us to take some drastic actions, such as like finger Thors or things like that. Or I can leave it open and deal with a little bit less respiratory drive for the patient or ability to fill that lung. So, I bet you that chest seals are going to start leaving recommendations pretty soon in these traumatic environments. It's still standard of care in a lot of places. So, always follow local policies and procedures, but there is some changes coming to chest seals. I've personally not used chest seals to like seal up abdominal wounds or anything like that. There was talk for a while about using them on like neck wounds as an occlusive dressing to keep from an air embolus being, sucked into that vasculature. Again, I've never done that in real life. So with that, just be aware there's changes, on the horizon, and you do you at this point. So the last one we're going to answer here is it's asking about my fitness schedule for a video. And I don't think I'm going to do necessarily a standalone video for it because what I do is not necessarily optimal for, EMS. I think there's things I could do that would be more effective and really set me up for even more success in the job. Really what I've started doing recently is getting into the ultra running scene. Did a 100-miler earlier this year, did a 50-miler, I've done a couple 50Ks, run a handful of marathons, and I think that's great. That sets me up in a lot of different aspects. But if you really want to talk about optimal conditioning, I don't think that's it. So, I'm not a personal trainer. I'm not an expert in fitness. I can preach the importance of it, but I'm not the one to tell you exactly what you need to get fit and stay fit in this career. So I don't think that's for me to really say. I'll try to do one of these, every couple months or something, just to give you guys a chance to reach out because I get a lot of DMs and stuff and I just can't answer them all. So I like to be able to, answer at least some of your questions here. If you got any questions, you want to add anything, you just want to be snarky, leave them in the comments down below, and I will see you next week.